Disabled and wheelchair bound since 7 years old, and then later forced to retire from a job that she loved. Jenna Udenberg found a new purpose. I'll let you hear her story in her own words. This is the Grace Cycle Show with Karen Dittman, and this is the place where you can learn to stop striving and find a new way to thrive by living in God's grace. Jenna, hi, and welcome to the Grace Cycle Show.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm glad to have you here. So, I'm going to invite you to start off, just jump in and share with us a story of a time when you saw God's grace at work in your life to overcome something that was humanly impossible.
Yeah, there's just so many opportunities to share in that question, right? But I think the one that jumped out me the most is my pivot from being a music educator into becoming a nonprofit founder and a disability activist and advocate. God knows his children better than we know ourselves. And he knows I'm a stubborn little daughter. And he knows that he has to close some mighty doors for me to not go trying to reopen doors or windows or be like, are you sure about that? And so with my disability and my medical conditions, I was working from home as a music educator during the pandemic, and I thought I was just rolling into the next school year and life would be great. And all of a sudden, a week before going back into the classroom, my district came back and said, "We are no longer interested in your work from home order. You need to do a disability retirement and retire early as one of your options if this is what you'd like to do." And so that just really kind of sent me into a mini tailspin, and not a crisis of faith or any of those kinds of things, but just an identity crisis. Like, especially here in America, I feel like we get so wrapped up in our titles and in the work that we do instead of being a full human being. And so I remember cleaning up my work area in home, all the different instruments and all the different things music teachers use. And I was bending over to pick up something from the floor from my wheelchair. And all of a sudden, I was given the title Accessibility Educator. And I just
Mm,
had to sit back and like kind of do an aha of like, that wasn't me.
right.
I wasn't even thinking about any of the things. And it was an aha of like my education status and the skill sets that I possess from years of training and years of experience. They're not going anywhere. It's just a new way of using those skills. And so that set me apart as a 2020 Bush Fellow, and I only applied once. And so it's been interesting to see his hand in retrospect as I've helped others apply and apply multiple times and going, oh, yeah, you had that whole thing known and figured out because 2019 when you apply and 2020 when you find out, a lot of life change for all of us,
Hmm.
let alone for me. And now here we are into 3 years of having my nonprofit Above and Beyond with You and just all the amazing doors that have been opened in that work and more to come as well. So that's what brings me here today. I would have never thought about being on podcasts or being a part of this much larger global world in the podcast world. And so it's a great place to be and great to be here today.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and I'm just thinking back to that, when you heard the news that they weren't interested in renewing your contract to work from home, that must have really hit hard, like at who you believed you are.
Yeah, and it was so striking because a good friend of mine, who's kind of like another spiritual mom to me, she had just retired the spring before. And I'm like, oh, well, had I known that we were retiring at the same time, it would have been a very different approach. Had I been
Mm,
the one in control of this huge change, it would have been different. Had I been able to have my last concert, my last program, my last even just class with my kids. And then as time marched on, a lot of my coworkers and, friends in the profession were just like, Jenna, the kids don't know if you're dead or alive.
wow.
And I was like, oh, I didn't even think. Like, I knew they might, wonder why they're subs or wonder, you know what I mean? But I didn't even put two and two together how the kids' brains during COVID time would have worked. And I'm like, but we're working with lawyers and unions and all the things, and I can't just make a video to be like, hi guys, I'm here, I'm
Yeah.
okay, I just can't see you in this hat, but I'll see you at Super One, the grocery store, or I'll see you out in community. So that was hard. I'm still very thankful I'm still able to be our Lego robotics coach. So I'm in my 13th season of that. So I can still work with the middle school kiddos, and everybody looks at me weird like, you like middle school? I'm like, yep. They're my jam. So still excited to be able to do that and have that connection to kids and youth development. But yeah, very different from being a full-time teacher and in the classroom in public schools and being in that calling. So,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, change is good and change is hard.
It is. It is. And I'm just curious, like, you said if you had been in control, if you had retired on your own terms, it would have been different. Totally. I'm just wondering, would you have even retired if at that point or anytime soon, if God hadn't just kind of intervened, said, we're not doing this anymore?
Right. And I don't think so. And now that I look at the amazing personal and professional growth that I've been able to have and the opportunities that have opened because of having an open schedule in that sense, right? I think I'm more busy now as being retired than I was when
Yeah.
I was teaching full time. But I doubt that I would have. And because self-advocacy was such a thing, it started when I was 7 years old. I didn't have capacity or time. Like I always wanted to make things better for those that came behind me or alongside of me when I was going through stuff. So it wasn't like this was just like an epiphany that happened in, 2021. But when you're so entrenched in taking care of your own needs, sometimes it's hard to be able to have capacity to help others at the same time or after you've gone through a season of medical things. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, like I said, I know that he knows me better than anyone else of like, yep, you're my stubborn one, so let's get you to go this way and this is how we're gonna do it. And so
Yeah. 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 But then also, just right at the right moment, he dropped that into your mind. Accessibility educator. Is that what the phrase
yeah.
was?
Yep.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So tell
Yeah.
me what that looks like as an accessibility educator and your nonprofit above and beyond with you, right?
Yeah. Yep. In this process, I was also writing my memoir, so now I'm a published author. And so my memoir is within my spokes. And that came out in July of 2023. And so that all the proceeds from the sales of that book go to the work of Above and Beyond with You. And even the title of my nonprofit, Above and Beyond, stands for going above and beyond the ADA code, because so
Mm,
often builders, contractors, architects, business leaders, all those folks just think like the ADA code, Americans with Disabilities Act, is like that is all you can do. And you
mm,
must do, and this is all. But disability community and culture are like, no, that's the bare minimum. You can go above it and you can go beyond it. You just can't go less than.
mm-hmm,
And then the with you is a nod to my music career because the with really stands for that accessibility educator side of it. And the founding first few years of our board is very unique because it was all women led and it was all people connected to the education world in some way, shape, or form. So former special education teachers, special ed paras, adaptive PE teachers, administrators. So it really gave us that flair of education and that width of it's not just coming in and consulting or coming to a training. It's really building that relationship because we all don't know what we don't know, right? And we need
mm-hmm,
to live in community and being interdependent, not
mm-hmm,
independent, but interdependent, and not
mm,
working in silos as we try to change and do transformational change in our systems, in our own belief system, in the scripts that we don't even know that we're believing and acting out. And then you like, get that mirror of a situation in front of you and you're like, oh, that isn't rooted in the core of who I am or in my belief system. So why did I think that? Then why did I say that? Why did I do that? Why did that become
mm,
a habit? And
mm.
then the capital U of Above and Beyond with You stands for my last name because little kindergartners could not say Udenberg, let alone get it out of their mouth before I was three hallways away, down the thing. So they started
Yeah.
calling me Miss You.
Okay.
So, yeah, so that's kind of all of that in a nutshell. So, what our work looks like is, we love working with folks. We are based in Minnesota, but we love working with folks anywhere. really tailoring what that looks like. So if you're a small business owner versus an industry person or versus a state agency or a federal agency, what are the honest things that you want to look at and you want to fix and change either in your policies, in your hiring criteria? Because so often, like I'll use the example of me moving back to my hometown. I wasn't in my hometown for my first teaching job, but my sister was a teacher and we were working on creating a new high school because the original high
Mhm.
school was like built in 1949. So
Oh,
the access
way,
barriers,
way pre ADA.
yes, the access barriers I faced as a student there are, yeah, that's a whole nother
Mm.
podcast.
Yeah.
But so as we're building the new school, so often we just think about our audience in which we are facilitating, right? So, oh yeah, this for the students. Oh yeah, this for the students when they're in gym class. Oh yeah, this for, locker rooms and bathrooms and whatever. And then I'd flip the script and be like, so what if I get called back? What does that look like from the teacher side?
Mm,
Are the administration offices accessible? Are all the community ed offerings accessible? And it was just like, oh, right.
mm,
And even now, like when I'm working with playgrounds and stuff, everybody's always like, yeah, and this kid with this, condition could do this, 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 or this. Or this person, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, what about if it's mom or dad that's disabled and the kid is not? But the kid falls on this part of the equipment. Can the parent or grandparent or guardian get to said child?
mm.
Oh, we never think about that because playgrounds are for children. And it's like,
Right.
nope, it's for the whole family. So anyone in that situation can be a part of it. So we do a lot of just, flipping the script and thinking through things in a more holistic way, in a more logical way. And sometimes people appreciate that and their growth mindset. And then there's other parts of the population that are like, that's too much. That's overwhelming. That's daunting. We don't have to do that because code doesn't say we have to do that, or
Mm,
we don't have the funds to do that. And
mhm,
so it's a lot of thinking outside the box. It's just a lot of growth for me and my board as well. Like, because we're casting the net wide to be able to support all different aspects. We're learning every single day, not only about disability community and culture, but also about all of the different interfaces of
mhm,
just society and the many, many broken systems that we don't even know are in place behind the scenes, let alone that they're broken. And then have to go, oh my goodness, this is a big ball of yarn. And what part of the string do you pull first to
mm,
try to address all of these issues that are intertwined into each other?
mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. You used the word interdependence a while ago. I like that because I talk a lot about the importance of community, that we're not
Mm-hmm.
meant to do this alone, even though,
Mm-hmm.
the American way is it's me against the world, or maybe it's me and God against the world, but that's
Right.
not what we were meant for. So,
Mm-mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I love one of the books by, I think it was Jenny Allen, Find Your People. I did that
Mm,
probably sometime near during the pandemic. And it was just so real life. I'm a word picture kind of person. So, thinking about tribal life, thinking about community, thinking about women going down to the stream together to do laundry together, or going out to, create the flour together to bake the bread for the whole community. And how often we're not doing that, and how often we don't have the older generations reaching down to the younger generations. And we also don't have the younger generations reaching up to the older generations. And so we also feel that within disability community as well. Like, I mean, in the last, I would say 6 months, we've probably lost, to my knowledge, like 7 to 8 huge pillars of our movement and work, and making sure that all lived experiences, all lives are seen as important and are valued and are a part of our community, whatever,
mm,
that looks like. And so, I'm sitting here at 45 today, and me and my good friend, who's kind of my disability mentor and president of my nonprofit, she's going to be hitting the next milestone after 45. And I can tease her, she'll listen later.
mhm,
But we sat back at one point after one of our leaders had passed on, and it was like, oh my. we're the next generation. Uh-oh. We got
Mm.
we got a lot. We got big wheels and shoes to not necessarily fill because you can't fill someone else's
Mhm.
calling and their, work, but
Mhm.
come after and to come alongside and be a part of that legacy while still creating your own legacy and footprint on making things better and righting injustices, right? Like, I
Mhm.
mean, that's what it comes down to. And it's not, I don't use that word lightly, and I don't use it because it's a current societal buzzword, but justice is a huge part of,
Yes, it
our
is.
belief system and what we live out and who we worship and what we move
Mhm.
forward with. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. As you're talking, I'm aware, I know you talk about why accessibility and inclusion is important, but I wanted to shift that a little bit
mhm.
because as a person who is not disabled, I tend to think of how can I accommodate others? How can I help them get in? But I have a feeling that there is a lot that we can learn from the disabled community and from people like you. Would you just speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. So I always say that I'm very blessed to have been disabled at a young age. And a
Mm,
lot of non-disabled people just look at me in horror and shock. Like, what are you saying and why? Like, you were robbed of your childhood or you were robbed of this or that. And I come back and, again, I will be very honest of, I grew up in rural Minnesota, and so there wasn't a vast disability population. I didn't learn about disability pride until probably a decade ago, if even that long, right? And again, for those that are listening and they think pride is a bad word, pride is not a bad word in any sense. It's just the fact that like, there's a purpose and a plan to my life, and it might not look like anybody else's, but that's fine because it's mine. And it's
mhm,
okay for me to go, I deserve to be at this table with you. I am not someone that should be under the table collecting your scraps. I am not somebody who should be pitied upon. I am not somebody that, all those things, right? All those negative
yeah,
things of people thinking that disability is a bad word. It's very interesting because sometimes I get frustrated, being very vulnerable and honest right now,
yeah,
with others that don't know how to accommodate themselves or don't know how to go, oh, my hand is starting to get shaky. Maybe I shouldn't use this heavy glass. Maybe I shouldn't try to grab a glass that, I have to have the full circle. Maybe I need to use like coffee mugs or plastic things that have that handle that just give me more security because I've had to adapt since age 7 and I've just naturally, like my brain just knows how to do it. So
mhm,
a few years ago, I literally went to OT and I was like, I think something changed in my wrist because instead of pulling my pants on this way like everybody does, I'm now taking this hand and pulling it internally instead
mhm,
of externally. And so, yep, sure enough, we did some measurements, and she's like, "Yeah, you just lost this 5 degrees, and by losing that 5 degrees of function, your brain automatically just knew, oh, I can't do this anymore. I have to do this." And I didn't know it until my eyes saw it months later and went, what are you doing, hand? Why are you doing it that way? Right. And so when I get in those places of frustration, it's like, oh, yep, nope, don't judge. And
mm,
I'm not trying to, right? But it's just like, I don't get why can't you? And then it's like, oh, you haven't been forced to. Because again, a lot of my siblings in this, in our faith are stubborn just like me or haven't had those experiences, right? And so it's
mhm,
like, no, I want to do things the way I've always done them, or I don't want to ask for help.
mhm,
And that I would say I think is the hardest part to always hear, as if asking another human for help, no matter how big or small, no matter how frequent or infrequent, why is that seen as such a frailty? Or why is that
mm,
seen as such a disgrace? Oh
mm,
no, you had to ask for help. And
right.
it's like, let's go back to the word, right?
Mhm,
Let's go back to all those things. Like all the disciples didn't need the other disciples. I believe it was Aaron holding up Moses' arms or one of them. I'm
yes,
having a little
yes.
brain fog right now, but you
Yeah,
know what I mean?
Aaron
Like,
and another person, another man, yeah, holding up
yeah,
Moses's arms, yeah.
right. So it's
Mhm,
like that is an innate part of the journey in which we are on. So
mhm,
I've been doing a lot of not just self-reflection, not just personal growth, but a lot of just dismantling of what I somehow along this journey have picked up to see as normal, or to
Mm,
see as the American way, or to see as the
mm,
Christian way, or to see as whatever. And it's hard work, right? To
mm-hmm,
acknowledge something that isn't maybe what it was originally intended to be, or a thought process that wasn't the way that it is, or something that's really man-made, and I can't find any place to base this way of life on.
mm,
And it's hard feeling like a fish swimming upstream when you're going through those times of change in your faith walk and in your journey. And so, I think also coming back to your question, it's a little bit different, but part of my answer would also be too of, when you're trying to accommodate, or you're trying to make your programming or your ministry or your physical spaces accessible and open and welcoming to everyone, right? It's about not making the assumptions. It's about
mm-hmm,
not making it about you as a non-disabled person. And so
mm.
often that's really the root of it, is like, oh, you're stumbling over your words because you're so not,
Self-conscious.
thank you. I was like, it's a
Yeah.
C, but I can't
Mm-hmm.
remember. Yeah. So you're so self-conscious about it that then you're just creating more issues. And I've been there, right? My
Mm-hmm.
foot is in my mouth more often than not. So I haven't figured this all out. I ask for grace and
Yeah.
forgiveness all the time, especially with other people in my community, because I haven't lived their experience. And I don't want to say anything that is traumatizing or hurtful or misrepresenting of the heart and the spirit that comes behind the work and the relationships that I'm trying to build. But so often it's like people want to do for us, or they
Mm,
want to do to us, but they don't want to do with us. Because with us is hard. With us
mm,
can be dirty. With us can be like, oh, I myself also have to be vulnerable.
mm,
It's easier for me to throw some money at, let's put an elevator in our church, or throw some
mm,
money at, let's, get better snow removal people, so that way people can get safely in and out of our parking lot and our building and all the things. It's easier to say, well, if you have a need or an accommodation, go and find the pastor, or go and find lay leader so and so, versus like, nope, I'm inviting my neighbor who has this disability to then have that conversation of like, hey, I would really love you to come. What things do I need to work with you to put in
mm,
place so you can come and have all of your basic needs met, let alone all the other types of needs that might be there, right?
mm-hmm,
To make this a great experience. And then also have those check-in points as that activity is happening, instead of just being like, we're with you, and then we get to the event, and then now it's again that to you or for you kind of a
mm-hmm,
thing. So,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for being vulnerable, Jenna, because as you were talking, I was hearing some really key things. Like all of us do the self-judgment thing, don't we?
Hmm.
Whether it's the way you described your hand was different and you're like, why am I doing that? But there's so many things that we judge ourselves for internally. Nobody else might know it, but
Right.
that's one of the things that we all struggle with. So it's human.
Hmm. Right.
Yeah. And then also just that all of us, again, in our weakness, God says in Second Corinthians, or Paul wrote in Second Corinthians, when I am weak, then I am strong, because God says my grace is sufficient.
Hmm.
And we can all learn to lean on God's grace in our weakness. Um,
Right.
and then the other thing too, I talk a lot about curiosity and the power
Mm.
of curiosity. And I think that would go so far instead of standing in my discomfort, stepping into curiosity. And what's your experience? And so that's one of the reasons I
Right.
wanted to ask you that question. So thank you for being vulnerable in your answer, Jenna.
Yeah. And, curious questions are new to me, probably
Mm,
since 2021 when I was doing life coaching through my fellowship, and so I just appreciate that so much, because you don't know how much you're judging in
mhm,
default mode. Like, a lot of times we're not consciously thinking like, oh, Karen has a brownish wall behind her. that means dot dot dot, right? Like we are just getting so much information nonstop. Like you said, it's just the human condition. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times it's not good or bad, right? Like somebody might be like, oh, I don't really like that color. So to them, it'd be perceived as bad. But
Mm-hmm.
inherently, is a paint color good or bad?
Yeah.
No.
Right.
There's people in the world that want to tell us that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or different scenarios we've been in, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
one of my hospital rooms was that color. I don't like those memories that are attributed
Mm.
to, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But asking those curious questions of yourself and asking those curious questions in your areas of leadership and your areas of power. Because, even if you're not somebody that has a formal title,
Mm-hmm.
you are somebody that has power because every single one of us does. And what we do with
Yes.
it is what we're ultimately going to be judged
Yes.
with and
Yes.
about.
Yeah. I love the point that you made that it helps to look inside, like, what is this really about? I can
Hmm.
be curious about you, but also I can be curious about myself. Like, if I'm having a reaction, like, I want to take care of you, I want to make sure you're comfortable, I want to help you. What is that about inside me?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say also, like, all disabled folks, whether they want to admit it or not, we are a vulnerable population. And
Yeah.
so I think there's been like, if I can go here, you can cut me off if you want. But there is a lot of hurt and a lot of abuse when it comes to the spiritual practices and that entrenchment and that enablement and using people to hide behind,
Mm,
like, and so, I've experienced that firsthand in the church and in just the greater world, public, society, whatever word you want to use for it. But I would also say it's those hurts within the church and within the body that have made the hardest impacts. And so then it really, for me, thankfully, I've been quote unquote maturer in my faith for a long time. But early on, it was like, you know, hate the sin, not the sinner.
hmm.
And hate's a strong word, but disassociate the hurts that come from humans from our Father.
Yeah.
And so that can be really hard depending on
Yes.
where you're at in your journey and how you've seen faith lived out. So it is interesting, and I've had very many deeper conversations with folks who have been in different aspects of their life journey, of their spiritual journey in the last 6 to 9 months. And I just appreciate those very vulnerable, hard conversations.
Hmm.
And it created a lot of self-reflection for me of like, oh, the old version of Jenna would have been like, ooh, have I lost my faith? Have I lost my salvation? Have I lost my way? Because that's how some
Hmm.
folks take some of those conversations or those topics. And then in other ways, it was like, no, because I see these people that have struggled or are struggling, and they see me as a safe person to
Hmm.
have these deep, trusted spaces and conversations where they know that we can hold each other in that space. And it's not a judgment time. This is where you're at in your journey. And
Hmm.
we, in our human sight, can't see a day from now, a month from now, a year from now, our last breath,
Right.
right? So it's just a snapshot of where we are now. And so I hold those deep and hard conversations, right? When your spirit is just going, are we really going here? Are we really going here?
Hmm.
Okay, I guess I have to. Okay, well, I'm hearing my voice, but I don't know that those are my words, And it's like, nope, they're
Yeah.
not. But you need to learn this lesson, kid. You need to just sit in that discomfort many times to find that new level of comfort and that new connection through relationship.
Hmm. Right. Right. Yeah. Because it's hard sometimes to remember that we are all human and we are
Mhm.
all acting out of our broken humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
And so often you want to go back, right? Like, oh, I can't believe last week I said this because now I know better. I know I'm trying to do better, but it's recorded out there for the whole world to hear or see or read,
hmm.
and it's like, right. And sometimes you have to eat some humble pie and be like, that's what I thought was best at that time. And
Right.
now I'm here,
Right.
better or worse. Now I'm here, and this
Hmm.
is the experiences I've had. and here's the knowledge that I've been given. Here's maybe some wisdom I hope I've gleaned and that I've put into action.
Mm-hmm.
And now on to the next and on to the next.
Right. We're all growing, and we need to acknowledge that in ourselves and give that space to others too, that compassion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jenna, thank you so much for your vulnerability and for being here. Tell me more about how we can get a hold of your memoir or get involved or find out more about what you're doing with Above and Beyond with you, or just how we can get in touch with you.
Yeah, awesome. You can find Within My Spokes, my memoir, anywhere where you buy your books. Currently, it is in paperback and Kindle form. It will be coming out shortly in audiobook form as well as hardcover. So, depending on when this is released, it might already be out. So, check all those different spaces. And then you can find us on our website, Above and Beyond with You, the capital U.org. And there'll be links there to access the book, plus also connect with us about, potential of working together with consulting or training or just having questions about where's the best accessible place to go on the North Shore of Minnesota, or hey, where you want to be in these spaces, what would you recommend of questions to ask for going to a hotel, or lots of different questions we get through our contact form on our website. And
Mm,
if you're into social media, we are on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.
great. And I'm assuming people can also donate to your nonprofit if they believe strongly in what you're doing.
Absolutely. There's a couple different donate options on our website, and we would love to partner with folks to bring this work to all different spaces.
Mm, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today, Jenna.
Thank you, Karen.
I think an important part of my conversation with Jenna came about when we talked about being curious about others and about ourselves instead of stepping into judgments or assumptions. We are all human, and yes, we might step on each other's toes at times, but it is powerful when we pause to ask another person what they need, disabled or not, and remain honest about what I can do in response to their needs. So if you have any questions about Jenna's work or accessibility for people who are disabled, I encourage you to go ahead and reach out to her on her website, which is in the show notes. And remember that God's grace is always sufficient. If you want to discover more about God's grace and the grace cycle, go to my website at karenadittman.com to get a free copy of the chapter about grace from my book, Thriving in Grace, Unleashing Wellness from a Biblical Perspective. So that's it for today. Until next time, remember, get curious, stay connected, and live in grace.